Welcome to the finale of the podcast series on precision medicine. This marks the third and final episode of our trio series, where we have embarked on an enlightening journey through the world of precision medicine. In our previous episodes, we delved deep into the strategies for advancing precision medicine, its adoption, and accessibility. And now, in the conclusive episode, we turn our attention to the critical aspects of risks and pricing strategies in precision medicine. You know that in US, the average cost of the single precision medicine treatment can exceed $100,000, highlighting the critical need for effective pricing strategies to ensure affordability and accessibility for patients. And the pricing of precision medicine is a delicate balancing act, crucial for ensuring access without compromising sustainability. To guide us through this important discussion, we are privileged to have Barri, the CEO of the Innovara, back with us. Her extensive expertise in the healthcare and life sciences makes her the perfect guest to shed light on these complex yet crucial topics. So let's get started. Barri, one of the questions which always come to mind, there is no innovation that does not have a dark side. But we know actually in the cell and gene therapy, if something is changed, you can't actually revert it back.
Right.
And it's debatable that how much actually testing or trials has been done and how much effective it is. In that regard, what are actually the risk and safety issues you think and how actually the company should address those?
Well, right now there's about 2,000 cell and gene therapies in development under IND on a BLA path by the FDA. And yet, if we look at how many have made it to market, it's about, of every 2,000, it's about 8. So there's a huge fallout rate here, right? And the fallout rate is particularly in the gene editing side of things. Just today, read an announcement of Novartis carving away, just dropping a gene therapy in dry age-related macular degeneration, which is a huge need, unmet need in this country. And they've just said, no, it's just not going to work. And for whatever reason, they're cutting their continuation of that project and that asset. So, there's a lot of fallout, and we don't always know why a clinical program has been discontinued. So the dark side is that we don't know why something stopped. So other companies developing dry, age-related macular degeneration drugs, gene therapies, don't have the benefit of learning. What did Novartis learn from that? What made them stop that research? What should we be looking for, or what should we be trying to overcome in the design of our research? So I think the failure to share medicine, to share the reason for discontinuation of a research trial, beyond the classic, we're reevaluating our portfolio and we're trying to trim down the number of assets we're trying to bring to market at one time. That's the classic safe approach. But, honesty among the scientists and researchers and companies around why did we discontinue the development. So that's the dark side we don't know. The second dark side is the cost of innovation. So, why is America on average 2/3 more expensive than every other nation in the world when we're in the bottom third in terms of average quality of healthcare for the average citizen. And that's the argument is we finance the world of innovation. And so it's no secret that right now, for you to be successful with a precision medicine, you have to have FDA approval. Unless it's a very unique drug that doesn't exist in the U.S., you are going to want a U.S. FDA pathway. And because USA will give a price premium to innovation, everybody wants to start with U.S. pricing, and then, yes, countries with national health care have reference pricing. So as other countries come aboard with a lower price, they're going to mandate the lowering of that price. So everybody wants to at least start with the FDA, and you can't go up, you can only go down. You can go up in America, but you can't everywhere else. So you have to remember that gap between the cost of a drug and access to the drug in these countries is going to widen and widen and widen over the years. So that's the dark side of innovation, I would say. And the third dark side that I talk about is that precision medicines are biased towards focusing on cancers and rare diseases and ultra-rare diseases. They are not focused on general health needs of the population because, again, the cost and scalability is an issue. So the governments are rewarding research and encouraging research in innovative therapies for rare diseases, but they're not addressing the general population and the continuing need we have, particularly for things like new antibiotics that can overcome microbial resistance or, deal with some of the multimicrobial consequences we're seeing that is, a train wreck happening in every hospital in this country. So, and they make it very difficult to bring a new antibiotic to market, really difficult, and yet we were able, with lightning speed, to bring, new drugs for COVID and new vaccines for COVID. And when you look at the cost to the U.S. government of doing that, it was around, I'll be conservative and say $10 billion. $10 billion. But when you think about the cost of all of these, people dying for lack of effective antibiotics, what's it costing our societies around the world? And what's it really costing the human cost? So that's the dark side of this, is that we're running off on looking at really serious, horrendous rare diseases in terms of the consequences to families. But we are still talking about relatively small patient pools, and we're ignoring the bigger needs of the population overall. So that, I think, is that leads to my other dark side of things, is what you were talking about, which is the FDA says you're going to have to do these controlled research trials in order to see if the drug works. And for that, we're going to eliminate out of our patient pool anybody with a comorbidity that could complicate outcomes, make the drug look any less good than it is. So we want a very clean population when we do this research, as clean as we can get. Even if they've got cancer, and, it's life-saving, but that's, again, precision medicine. When we're talking about any hypertensives or cardiovascular drugs or drugs for diabetes, we want to eliminate these confounders. And then the drug gets approved and it's in the market, and now we see real-world evidence. And we start to learn things that should have been discovered in the research phase that would have better informed the industry and the patients and the governments. But, that's the trade-off. That's the dark side. We're going to put a drug on the market based on very clean data, great data, and then find out more later. And then the agencies have mechanisms for monitoring those, but not in America. We're not good at that. Where they're good at that in a national healthcare scheme because they're reimbursing patients. So they have national databases and they can be looking for that. But in America, because of our fragmented databases and privacy, we don't, unless we really have a big database with lots of patients and we can look for that specifically, we may have trouble. And I'll give you a very real example right now. There is, as everybody knows, a huge spike in using drugs for diabetes that also have a weight management benefit. Huge. Those GLP-1 drugs and injectables or orals. In Europe, they're beginning to see and track the development of thyroid and neck nodules. And it's very concerning. And the evidence, because I monitor cancer more than anything, right? And what causes cancer. I'm watching these data very closely. Can I get the data from America? No. And I'll talk about why not. And that's another dark side. So Europe, I have to look at what Europe is monitoring and how they're monitoring it and how many of those nodules have the potential to become cancerous. And we are beginning to see the development of thyroid cancers and head and neck cancers. The concern for that is legitimate. Let's put it that way. I'm not sure if it's a black box yet, but it is something that needs to be closely monitored. The dark side is patients will go, people with these diseases, they wanted to lose the weight. They hear about the meeting. They go to the primary and they say, I want access to prescribe it for me. In many of the countries, the doctors will say, you don't have diabetes. I can't give it to you. And they'll say, I'll pay for it. It's not covered in law. It's off label. It's okay. I'll pay for it. So guess what happens? They'll get it. It's off label. It's not being monitored. So if they develop that adverse event, it's not being reported. And therefore we don't know real world what really is happening. And that's another dark side.
You also talked about pricing, that, okay, every drug would like to actually capture on the high pricing of drugs which are actually in the US and then go to UK and then Spain and then. like it's a pricing which is actually going to go from a top dollar to actually keep going down as you move to the different countries. So in terms of like how I should price the precision medicine, or what I should actually really take care of to make sure that I am not doing something wrong, because pricing is actually one of the things. If you get it wrong, as you said, I'm going to actually not be able to get the benefits in the first year and the second year, and
the rest of my life. Correct. So I think you speak to the need for really robust health economic outcomes analysis prior. I mean, I think this economic analysis should be happening even prior to entering a clinical research. Why even go into clinical research if your innovation, by the time it gets to market, there's going to be no value, and therefore, no incentive, let's say, you're going to run dry, and then it's not going to do anybody any good. So health economic modeling is really critical. And there are institutions, ICER and others, that, this is all they do. They just do the health economic analysis, cost comparative analysis. These are all fundamentally the same thing. You have to recognize that governments, there's three ways we analyze cost and the value of a drug. And all of them are based on how much can we afford to rationalize approving this drug? How much can we afford to pay where the benefit exceeds the cost? It's a cost benefit analysis, right? So what we're looking for is what's that sweet spot where a government I can show them the data, and it's country by country, that says in our country, this is what we should be able to afford to pay, because this is going to cost us less to use this drug than not to use this drug. If you can prove it. Okay. So what do? We price in the markets, and we do the analysis in the markets where we can prove the benefit, which is why we come to America. Okay? First. Okay. Then it's kind of the rest of the world has to decide for themselves if this is going to work or not. In countries like India, where there really isn't much health insurance, and everybody has private insurance, so they pay out of pocket, the average citizen isn't going to afford any of these drugs. So then it's going to be the wealthy have access to benefit, and the non-wealthy don't. But I know people who've moved to America to have access to medicines because in their own countries they wouldn't have access. Companies wouldn't bother bringing the drug to that market because it's just not worth it to them. The risk is just not there. So I work with a number of health economic groups. We call them health technology assessment. Okay. So this is where we look at the technology and we do a future forecast and say, what is the value? And governments look at three things. We look at direct costs, indirect costs, and social costs. And governments in particular first just look at the direct costs. How much is this drug and those providers and that hospital and the equipment and the diagnostics, everything that's required to provide that therapy to that patient, how much is the direct cost? Then you've got your indirect costs. You've got all of the other supporting costs that are required to make sure patient monitoring, for example, but it's important to the therapy. And then you've got the social cost, which is what's the cost to the patient and the family? Do they require caregivers? How did they get to the hospital for their therapies? What's the burden on the family? And the governments don't want to know about that. They don't want to think about that. But that's what the patient and their family is thinking about. How much is this really going to cost me beyond what the government's willing to pay for? What am I, and can I afford even the out-of-pocket, even if it's nationally insured? And the government basically, the more expensive with these really expensive drugs, the more they're saying, you know what, patient support programs to monitor durability of the drug, we're not going to pay for that at all. That's the burden to the company providing the drug. It's an obligation, legal obligation. And if you're not prepared to do that and pay for it, we're not going to approve the drug.
Okay. So with that, actually, we come towards the end, Barry. It's really a lot of things to actually think about. The field is actually really growing. Currently, it's $29 billion, expected to be $29 billion in 2023. And it's going to be about $59 billion by the 2028, which is actually CAGR of about 11%. Towards the end, what will be your last words of advice to our audiences?
There's so much advice I could give, but if I had to really break it down, I think that I would come back to the people that you're ultimately serving and stay focused on that mission. Stay focused on the good that you're going to do and how you can serve the patient with a rare disease or cancer. What do they really need you to do and bring to them, and how they need to support you to be successful? And we pay a lot of lip service to patient centricity. We pay a lot of lip service in our industry. I mean, what company wouldn't say in precision medicine that they don't care about people? So it's a given that we consider ourselves patient-centric. But I can tell you that when I'm advising my clients who to invest in, I say, just listen to the company present. Listen to how they talk about the patient. Watch their body language. Watch the tone and manner with which they speak with sincerity, respect, empathy, concern. One company that I think is probably the most patient-centric company I've ever in precision medicine that I've ever had the honor of getting to know. And I'm going to put their name out there. It's called Mazi Therapeutics. Mazi is a Greek word for together. And this is almost, I would have to say, a virtual precision medicine company that has an incredible commitment by top scientists, patient advocacy groups, leadership. Everybody is focused on what is that one patient with that one rare disease that we think we can get together and put our heads together and come up with a solution that will work not only for the patient but for the family. And I'll give you a very real example. When I said, well, you're doing some gene editing, you're doing some stem cell research and on, so that your product, this is like the product-driven technology. We have this technology platform. You don't have a technology platform. Sometimes you're doing gene therapy, sometimes you're doing cell therapy, sometimes you're doing T-cell therapy, it's a stem cell research or NKs. And what is it that makes you decide which way to go? And they go, it's the patient. If those patients and their families, the parents, say, we don't want our child, even with a rare disease, we don't want their genes edited, we won't do it. We'll look for other solutions that can help them. And maybe it's not the end all, but it's what the risk that those families are willing to take with the children that they love.
Thank you very, very much, Barri.
You're welcome. It's a pleasure.
In this final episode of our podcast series on precision medicine, Barri has illuminated the critical significance of risk and pricing in the world of precision medicine. We have explored the delicate balance between patient safety, affordability, the innovation in this transformative field. Precision medicine offers incredible promise, but also presents challenges. Navigating these challenges demands careful consideration and strategic planning. Moreover, pricing precision medicine appropriately is a delicate and vital balance to strike. Barri's insight serves as a compass to all stakeholders in this field. We extend our heartfelt gratitude to Barri for guiding us toward a future where precision medicine transforms healthcare, leaving no one behind. Thank you for joining us on this enlightening journey through the world of precision medicine. Stay tuned for another exciting topic. Until then, take care and follow the Technocrats.